Silence does not arrive like a storm. It enters quietly, like a change in breathing, like a pause in a room that used to be full of noise. A fed-up empath does not change with anger first. The change begins with stillness, with restraint, with the decision to stop giving more than they receive. This is not weakness, this is awareness forming inside a tired heart. An empath lives in connection. They feel the mood of a room the moment they walk in. They notice small changes in people's faces, voices, and energy. They sense pain before it is spoken. They carry other people's stress without being asked. They care deeply and naturally, not because they want praise, but because it feels right to them. They give time, patience, attention, and understanding. They stay when it is hard. They forgive when others would walk away. They explain when silence would be easier. They keep trying when logic says stop. Over time, this costs something. Not money, not status, but energy, emotional strength, inner peace, sleep, focus, safety. A part of the self starts to fade when care becomes constant sacrifice. The body feels tired even after rest. The mind feels full even in silence. The heart feels heavy without a clear reason. At first, they ignore it. They think it is normal. They believe love requires effort and pain. They believe loyalty means endurance. They believe understanding means tolerance. They believe being good means staying. Then something shifts. They stop feeling heard. They stop feeling valued. They stop feeling safe. They stop feeling respected. And instead of reacting, they become quiet. This silence is not empty. It is full of thought, reflection, awareness, memory, clarity. They replay moments in their mind, words they ignored, patterns they excused, behavior they defended, disrespect they normalized, promises that never changed into action, apologies that never led to growth, cycles that repeated again and again. They stop explaining their pain to people who never listened. They stop asking for care from people who never gave it. They stop fighting for space in places that never made room for them. This silence becomes a wall, not a wall of hate, not a wall of revenge, not a wall of bitterness, but a wall of boundaries. Their voice becomes calmer, their tone becomes slower, their reactions become fewer. Their responses become shorter, their presence becomes more controlled. They stop sharing everything, they stop opening up easily, they stop giving full access to their inner world, not because they are cold, but because they are done being drained. A narcissist grows power through attention, emotion, and reaction. They need response, they need engagement, they need control of energy. They need people to feed their sense of importance. They grow louder when they feel ignored. They push harder when they feel distance. They provoke when they feel losing control. The fed-up empath does the opposite. They go quiet, they step back, they stop feeding chaos, they stop participating in emotional games, they stop chasing peace from people who create conflict. This is why the shift is dangerous, because silence removes influence, silence removes access, silence removes control, silence removes leverage. The empath no longer gives emotional reactions for free. They no longer offer explanations as comfort. They no longer offer forgiveness without change. They no longer offer patience without respect. They start choosing where their energy goes. They protect their mornings. They protect their sleep. They protect their mind. They protect their peace. They protect their space. They do not announce it. They do not explain it. They do not justify it. They simply change. This is where the power flips. The narcissist depends on reaction. The empath now controls reaction. The narcissist feeds on emotion. The empath now controls emotion. The narcissist creates chaos. The empath now creates distance. The narcissist uses noise. The empath uses silence. This silence feels unsettling to people who are used to access. They notice the emotional gap, the calm tone, the lack of response, the shorter conversations, the absence of reaction, and it scares them because they feel the loss of influence. The empath is no longer easy to read, no longer easy to push, no longer easy to trigger, no longer easy to guilt, no longer easy to control. They still feel deeply, they still care deeply, they still love deeply, but they no longer give blindly. They now observe before they act, think before they speak, choose before they commit, watch patterns instead of words, trust behavior instead of promises. Their silence they stop trying to fix broken people, they stop carrying broken systems, they stop holding broken relationships together, they stop sacrificing their mental health for connection. They learn that not every bond is meant to be saved, not every person is meant to stay, not every relationship is meant to last, not every connection is healthy. This awareness does not harden the heart, it strengthens the mind. They become grounded, stable, focused, centered. They no longer live in emotional chaos, confusion, guilt, obligation. They live in choice. This silence is calm but firm, gentle but strong, peaceful but unbreakable. They do not fight for control, they remove access to control. They do not seek power, they build independence. They do not seek dominance, they choose freedom. They stop chasing people, validation, approval, love that costs self-respect. They choose themselves. The fed-up empath becomes dangerous because they are no longer predictable. Their kindness is no longer automatic. Their loyalty is no longer blind. Their care is no longer endless. Their forgiveness is no longer cheap. They still love, but with limits. They still care, but with boundaries. They still connect, but with awareness. They no longer live for emotional approval, acceptance, validation. They live for peace, growth, stability, clarity. This silence before the shift is the moment they stop being emotional providers and start being self-protectors. They stop pouring into others and start building themselves. They stop losing themselves in relationships and start finding themselves in solitude. They stop chasing connection and start choosing alignment. They stop surviving and this is the true danger. Not anger, not revenge, not aggression, not cruelty, but control, discipline, clarity, self-respect. The empath becomes someone who cannot be easily shaken, manipulated, used, or controlled. Their silence becomes their strength. Their calm becomes their power. Their distance becomes their protection. And once this shift happens, there is no return to the old version. Because the person who learns to protect their energy never gives it away carelessly again, the person who learns to value their peace never trades it for chaos again. The person who learns self-respect never accepts disrespect again. The silence before the shift is the beginning of freedom, and freedom, once felt, never leaves the soul. The emotional detachment does not begin with hate, anger, or bitterness. It begins with clarity. It begins the moment the empath realizes that feeling everything for everyone is not strength anymore. It is self-destruction. The heart that once opened easily starts to slow down, not closed, not cold, not cruel, just careful. The fed-up empath still feels deeply, still understands pain, still sees suffering, still senses emotions in others, but something important changes inside them. They stop absorbing other people's emotions as their own. They stop carrying stress that does not belong to them. They stop feeling responsible for fixing broken people. They stop feeling guilty for choosing rest. They stop feeling wrong for choosing peace. Their nervous system begins to calm. Their body feels lighter. Their mind becomes quieter. Their thoughts become clearer. Their emotions become stable instead of chaotic. They no longer react fast. They no longer explode. They no longer chase. They no longer beg. They no longer over-explain. They no longer defend their boundaries with emotion. They respond slowly, calmly, directly, and without fear. This detachment is not emptiness. It is control. It is the ability to feel without losing balance. It is the power to care without losing self-respect. It is the strength to love without losing identity. They learn to separate empathy from attachment. They learn that understanding someone does not mean sacrificing for them. They learn that compassion does not mean tolerance of harm. They learn that kindness does not mean endless access. They learn that loyalty does not mean self-betrayal. Their emotions become organized instead of chaotic. Their energy becomes focused instead of scattered. Their attention becomes selective instead of available to everyone. This is where they become dangerous in a quiet way. A narcissist depends on emotional chaos, confusion, reactions, guilt, fear, emotional pressure, and emotional dependency. The fed-up empath now removes all of that fuel. They stop reacting emotionally to manipulation. They stop responding emotionally to disrespect. They stop engaging emotionally in control games. They stop giving emotional energy to people who drain them. Their face becomes calm, their voice becomes steady. Their eyes become observant, their presence becomes firm. They no longer argue to prove a point. They no longer chase to be understood. They no longer explain their worth. They no longer fight for attention. They no longer compete for love. They no longer beg for respect. They simply choose distance, clarity, and peace. This emotional detachment is not cruelty, it is discipline, it is self-leadership, it is self-respect in action. They begin to choose who gets access to their emotions. They begin to choose who gets their time. They begin to choose who gets their attention. They begin to choose who gets their energy. Not everyone qualifies anymore. Not everyone is allowed close. Not everyone gets to hear their fears. Not everyone gets to see their vulnerability. Not everyone gets to share their inner world. This creates power. Sen hindran tusen zayten. This creates power, quiet power, stable power, calm power. The kind of power that does not seek attention. The kind of power that does not need validation. The kind of power that does not need to dominate, the kind of power that does not need to control, the kind of power that comes from inner stability. Their emotional world becomes their private space. Their peace becomes their priority. Their growth becomes their focus. Their life becomes intentional instead of reactive. They stop living in emotional cycles. They stop repeating toxic patterns. They stop attracting chaos. They stop feeding drama. They stop surviving and start building. They build habits. They build discipline. They build structure. They build focus. They build identity. They build independence. Their emotional detachment makes them unreadable to manipulators. It makes them unpredictable to narcissists. It makes them unmovable in chaos. It makes them calm in conflict. It makes them stable in pressure. It makes them grounded in uncertainty. People who once controlled them through emotion can no longer reach them. Guilt no longer works. Fear no longer works. Anger no longer works. Silence no longer scares them. Threats no longer move them. Emotional pressure no longer controls them. This is the real shift. The empath becomes someone who cannot be emotionally hijacked, someone who cannot be pulled into chaos, someone who cannot be used for emotional supply, someone who cannot be controlled through pain, someone who cannot be broken through manipulation. Their empathy becomes clean, not heavy. Their care becomes intentional, not automatic. Their love becomes selective, not blind. Their compassion becomes wise, not reckless. They still feel, but they do not drown. They still care, but they do not collapse. They still connect, but they do not lose themselves. This is the danger, not rage, not even, not cruelty, but emotional independence, emotional clarity, emotional control, emotional stability. The fed-up empath becomes someone who can walk away without guilt, detach without hatred, set boundaries without fear, choose peace without shame, choose themselves without apology. Their presence becomes calm and strong at the same time. Their energy becomes quiet and powerful at the same time. Their mind becomes gentle and sharp at the same time. This is the kind of person that cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, cannot be drained, cannot be used. Emotional detachment does not remove their humanity. It protects it. It does not make them cold. It makes them safe. It does not make them distant. It makes them free. And freedom is always more dangerous than chaos, because chaos can be controlled, but freedom cannot. From compassion to control is not an overnight change. It begins as a subtle shift in how the empath engages with the world, a quiet recalibration of their priorities and energy. For years they have given without limits, extended trust without proof, and offered care without boundaries. They have absorbed the pain of others, carried responsibilities that were never theirs, and sacrificed their own peace for the comfort of those who never reciprocated. At first, this appears to be strength, a testament to patience and kindness, but over time, it becomes a liability. The empath begins to notice the patterns they were blind to for so long, the repeated manipulations, the insincerity masked as friendliness, the constant demands that drain them. Slowly, they realize that compassion without control is vulnerability exploited. They begin to understand that their generosity and empathy have been tools for others to manipulate, distract, and dominate them. This awakening does not spark anger immediately. It sparks awareness. Awareness turns to decision, and decision turns into action. The empath begins, and these limits are no longer suggestions. They are rules enforced with discipline and consistency. They stop giving access to people who misuse it. They stop offering explanations to those who do not seek understanding. They stop sacrificing their mental and emotional energy for validation that never comes. In its place, a new approach develops: compassion combined with control. Every act of kindness is intentional. Every gesture of understanding is measured. Every moment of care is balanced against the need to protect themselves. They do not abandon empathy, they recalibrate it. They care for those who value them, for those who respond to kindness with respect, for those who contribute positively to their lives. For everyone else, they withdraw attention, limit emotional exposure, and enforce boundaries without hesitation. This control is not about cruelty or revenge. It is about self-preservation. It is about ensuring that giving does not mean losing oneself. They realize that true influence comes not from unlimited giving, but from strategic allocation of attention and energy. This does not happen overnight, nor is it linear. The process is gradual, filled with reflection, trial, and conscious reinforcement of new habits. They notice how much lighter they feel when they are selective about whom they invest in. They feel stronger, more stable, more capable. Their presence becomes commanding, not because they are louder, but because they are no longer accessible to manipulation. Their emotions are intact but shielded. Their energy is theirs to manage, and their time is no longer squandered. The shift from being endlessly compassionate to being selectively controlled transforms every interaction. They speak less to people who demand too much. They respond less to drama that seeks to ensnare them, and they choose engagement where it benefits them and their growth. Others may notice the change and perceive it as coldness or detachment, but in reality, it is precision, mastery over how and to whom their empathy is extended. Compassion now comes with boundaries. Kindness now comes with limits. Love now comes with awareness. The empath becomes a force to be reckoned with because they are no longer a passive participant in other people's emotional turbulence. They are an active architect of their own emotional life. They stop being a tool for someone else's ego and start being the leader of their own mind, body, and heart. Every decision about how to give, when to engage, and whom to trust is made with strategic clarity. The danger of a fed-up empath is that they can no longer be manipulated through guilt, fear, or neediness. Their past openness is replaced with present vigilance. Their previous vulnerability becomes a new form of strength. The control they exercise over their own compassion disarms those who once thrived on exploiting them. People who attempted to dominate them through emotional leverage now encounter calm, measured responses instead of reactive surrender. This shift creates a balance where the empath no longer sacrifices self for others. They now govern their energy, set boundaries, enforce them, and observe without unnecessary engagement. This balance does not remove empathy. It transforms it into a precise tool of influence and self-protection. They remain able to connect, able to support, and able to feel, but every act is intentional. No longer is their heart an open door to anyone who knocks. It is a selective gateway, available only to those who respect and reciprocate. In this way, the empath becomes more dangerous than the narcissist, not through manipulation or aggression, but through mastery of their own emotional power. They operate from clarity rather than impulse, from presence rather than reaction, from control rather than chaos. The combination of compassion and control turns past vulnerability into current authority, creating a person who cannot be used, cannot be shaken, and cannot be bypassed. Every interaction becomes measured, every choice becomes deliberate, every boundary becomes unyielding. This transformation is slow, deliberate, and unstoppable once initiated. It is the point where empathy becomes strength, awareness becomes strategy, and care becomes an instrument of personal empowerment rather than a conduit for exploitation. Once this balance is achieved, the empath no longer just survives emotional turbulence. They navigate it with precision, protecting themselves while still capable of meaningful connection, and those who attempt to interfere discover that a quiet, controlled, compassionate person is more formidable than anyone who relied on manipulation, chaos, or fear. Strategic coldness is not born from anger or a desire for revenge. It is born from wisdom, from the understanding that unchecked emotions create vulnerability, and that clarity and distance are the most powerful shields one can possess. A fed-up empath has already given endlessly, forgiven repeatedly, and been taken for granted countless times. Every act of care without recognition, every effort to understand that is met with dismissal, every moment spent trying to repair what others have broken has chipped away at their energy and patience. The turning point arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly. They begin to notice the patterns that they once ignored, the repeated lies, the subtle manipulations, the people who drain without giving back. They see clearly how their kindness has been exploited, how their trust has been weaponized, and how their openness has been mistaken for weakness. At first, they may feel sadness, confusion, even guilt, but gradually those feelings are replaced by calculation. They understand that to protect themselves, they must no longer respond emotionally to those who would use them. This is where strategic coldness emerges, not as a mask, not as an act, but as a deliberate practice of control. They measure their words carefully, responding only when it serves their purpose or maintains their peace. They reduce the availability of giving it only to those who earn it or to situations where it is necessary. Their body language, their tone, their presence all communicate calm, reserve, and an unreadable steadiness. People who once provoked reactions, who thrived on chaos, suddenly find themselves met with silence, with composure, with intentional distance. This coldness is not cruel, it is protective. It is designed to conserve energy, maintain boundaries, and ensure that the empath is no longer drawn into unnecessary conflict. In every interaction, they weigh the cost of engagement. They observe carefully, speak sparingly, and act deliberately. They no longer offer explanations or justify their actions. They do not chase approval, they do not defend their decisions, and they do not allow others to manipulate their emotions. This strategic approach turns empathy into a tool of influence and self-preservation. A narcissist may believe they can provoke the empath, trigger guilt, or force compliance, but they encounter a calmness that cannot be shaken. They meet a steadiness that does not yield to manipulation. They face a presence that does not bend under pressure. The empath has learned to transform vulnerability into strength by managing how and when they invest emotionally. This calculated reserve allows them to maintain connections where it is beneficial and withdraw from relationships where it is harmful. Every interaction becomes a choice. Every engagement becomes deliberate. Every boundary becomes firm. People who are accustomed to easy access, to reaction, to emotional overexposure find the shift jarring. The unpredictability, the calm, the measured response, all create a quiet power that is far more formidable than outward aggression or loud confrontation. The empath's coldness is not devoid of feeling. It is precision applied to protect what is precious, their energy, their peace, their self-respect. They still observe, they still understand, they still connect, but now selectively, strategically, with intention. They no longer allow others to dictate their emotional state. They no longer allow others to pull them into unnecessary chaos. They no longer allow manipulation to succeed. Strategic coldness becomes both shield and weapon. It allows the empath to navigate social interactions with clarity, to protect themselves while maintaining agency, and to preserve their emotional and mental resources for growth, success, and relationships that are truly reciprocal. It is the point where emotional intelligence meets strategic mastery. The empath becomes untouchable, not through force, but through calculated restraint. Their calm is their power, their distance is their authority, and their selective engagement becomes a silent form of dominance. Those who once relied on control, intimidation, or manipulation discover that this quiet, composed, and controlled presence cannot be moved. It is a state of mastery that combines understanding, patience, and precision. The empath no longer sacrifices their well-being for others who do not respect it. They no longer overextend their care for those who take it for granted. They no longer allow manipulation to dictate their life. Strategic coldness is the manifestation of experience, insight, and the deliberate choice to place self-preservation above pleasing everyone. It signals to the world that they are no longer available for exploitation, that their emotions are not for rent, and that their energy is a resource that will only be shared intentionally. In this state, the empath is more powerful than any narcissist, not because they dominate or intimidate, but because they are unshakable, disciplined, and in control. They are untouchable in ways that chaos and manipulation cannot penetrate. They operate from calm, they act from clarity, and they engage only where it matters. This strategic coldness transforms past pain into present power, and every interaction becomes an opportunity to maintain stability, enforce boundaries, and protect the peace they fought so hard to reclaim. They are no longer reactive, they are deliberate. They are no longer vulnerable, they are prepared. They are no longer at the mercy of others, they are the architects of their emotional empire. The calm after the awakening is not loud or dramatic. It does not demand attention or prove a point. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. After enduring manipulation, betrayal, and the weight of carrying other people's emotions for far too long, the fed-up empath reaches a point where clarity replaces confusion, strength replaces exhaustion, and intentionality replaces chaos. This calm is earned. It comes after years of overgiving, after repeated disappointments, after the painful realization that empathy alone does not guarantee fairness or respect. In this state, every action is measured, every word is considered, and every choice is deliberate.